are going to the tailgate. So there's a lot of stuff there. The example here is a mother and daughter taking a trip to watch the NCAA Women's Field Hockey Championship as a way to bond. That's the way that my mother and I bonded when I was a kid. I remember my mom, we were having a little bit of an argument, and she knocked on my door, and she came in. She goes, Jason, would you like to go to the NCAA Women's Field Hockey Championship as a way to bond? And I said, yes, mother. That sounds delightful. All right, so we got that. And then more identification. Member identification, Burke identification, very, very important. Actually, what would be really, really super cool, I'm not requiring this, but you should do it anyway, is to discuss or insert or infuse the idea of identification in your first paper in some form or fashion. That would be super cool. But this whole idea of sports, of identification that's a huge motive, for people to watch sports, to participate in the whole process. And so there is that next section that starts on page 83 about sports identification and fandom. And it has this really interesting research about post-game affect. And affect usually means you're sort of an emotional reaction. And they talk about negative and positive correlations. I guess it gets all sciencey. But generally speaking, if your team does well, your mood is boosted, things look better, life is better, because you identify with this team, you're one with this team. If your team loses, everything sucks, your life sucks. You yell and scream, you cry, and that type of stuff. But also, research indicates, particularly for college students, if your teams are doing well, you're great, and you're a fan, your grades are better. Yeah, it says, for example, college and university graduates who attend their institutions, sporting events have been found to have higher grades, higher retention, and higher graduation rates. Which begs the question, if your team sucks, can you blame your poor grades on the Gamecocks? Yeah, of course I got a D on the examination. Did you see the game this weekend? Oh my gosh. Okay. And there's all these positive impressions that they talk about. This idea that if a team is really good, if you have a really good sports program, particularly at a college, it increases the likelihood that a college student will persist or be retained on the campus. I wonder how many students actually left Alabama because they lost the championship. I wonder how many kids in high school want to now go to Clemson because they won the national championship. That's huge. That actually happens. Everybody loves a winner. And also there was this idea of perceived similarity between sort of rivals. So for instance, when the Gamecocks play the Tigers, it's like, you become one. If you're a Gamecock fan, you are one. You think that you have more things in common with your fellow Gamecocks that you might actually have. And then you feel this disdain and this disconnect from all the Clemson folks. And even though you might actually have more in common with this Clemson fan over here, it's like, Devin, you devil. That's how Clemson fans talk. Yeah. Do you know if you listen to Christmas music backwards, you hear the voice of Burgermeister, Meisterburger? None of you will probably actually get that. But in any case, all right, blah, blah, blah. What I have here is something from Mount Pleasant Magazine. It's about rivalries, and it's just a bunch of Gamecock jokes and Clemson jokes. Some of them are sort of pretty. Some of them are sort of offensive, which maybe will get you to actually look at it. More stuff on identification. One thing that's really interesting, they talk about how the whole larger business and corporate model of sports, particularly the diehard fans, impacts the way that we identify with certain teams. That's not just that; it's different. But so, for instance, they talk about the idea in professional sports of free agency and how folks, particularly in Cleveland, identify with LeBron James, and then of course he made that decision to go to Miami, and it was a huge deal. And so it talks a little bit about that. They actually had a 75-minute live special on ESPN named The Decision. And in a lot of ways, it can also overcome serious obstacles confronting sports. This is interesting. This is on the bottom of page 84. Sport identification appears to have the ability to overcome serious obstacles that may be confronting a sport. For example, the rise in doping has emerged in sports such as baseball, cross-country skiing, cycling, and lots of other places. Yet researchers found that fans with a high-level identification with the sport, I love myself, the cross-country skiing. I'm a huge cross-country skiing fan. I have posters of all my favorite cross-country skiers all over my my bedroom, right next to Farrah Fawcett. Despite blah, 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 blah. So basically, if they have high level of identification with the sport and with the athletes, they have expressed more liberal attitudes towards doping than others who are not fans or don't have that same sense of identification. It says, despite the fallout from Lance Armstrong's confirmation of using performance-enhancing drugs to achieve his record-setting Tour de France wins, cycling fans still maintain a strong affiliation with the sport, obviously. But it's not just the sports, the athletes. I mean, if you really like the folks, it's like, it's not that big of a deal. It's just domestic violence. But there is this thing, oftentimes we give athletes a pass if we very strongly identify with the sport, but also the players, I think. And then there is this idea here as well, and I've already mentioned this, but when teams move, that it does, in fact, if fans have a high identification with the teams, it feels as if there has been a death in the family or there has been a divorce. There's a little thing in here about the Oklahoma City Thunder used to be the Seattle Supersonics, and the big controversy about what happened when they moved from Seattle to Oklahoma City. It's really interesting, but people are devastated when things like that happen. In fact, I don't know this for certain, but I heard from some of my day students that when Alabama came back, that's another sort of ritual we'll talk about in Chapter 5. Clemson had a big parade. They always have, everybody loves the winners, blah, 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 blah. But apparently just a handful of folks showed up to welcome the Alabama football team back to Tuscaloosa. Folks were mad. Those losers. You're supposed to win every single year. Roll Tide indeed. And then there is this last bit in this particular chapter about impact of new technologies on sport fandom. And you well know that, see me. Can you see me now? Ah! That's probably too bright for you. I don't really care. So you could, well, I can see now. Here's the idea. With new technologies, with computer-mediated communication, with all the stuff that we have out there, anybody can do their own sports blog or tweet about sports. That's when you're doing it. Are you a journalist? No. Are you as good as a journalist? Probably. But there are some good journalists out there who know their stuff. So basically, this practice that is of random people sort of doing their blogging and their tweets and all this type of stuff has aided in establishing the blog as a potentially credible source of information, although much of the discussion that flows from these sources represents simple assertions, opinions, and conjecture having limited journalistic quality, whatever journalistic quality is these days. And so they have this idea of the recliner reporter, just some dude or some woman who watches a bunch of stuff and blogs about it, and people can follow the blog or follow the tweets, and you know, I don't have to watch Supercenter, and that's Walmart. You know what? Sometimes I watch Supercenter. Sometimes I'll go to the Supercenter and just loiter in the parking lot and just watch it. Yeah, that would actually be a really interesting, I thought, if you've seen the Walmart people thing. The Sports Center. So, you know, there are sort of codified, or sort of not, that's the wrong term, but various sports media entities and news coverage that is deemed as, you know, most credible, blah, 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 blah. But you have lots of local radio shows, local so basically folks can do pretty much, you know, everything, but a lot of now so-called legitimate news sources like ESPN are going to fan sites and blogs, to all that types, to get more information. And also official websites now have fan profiles, and fans have their own websites. Fans can get on Wikipedia because of the nature of Wikipedia, and you know, offer their own thoughts about the whatever, help define or make sense, or offer information, or create information about said team. Obviously, people tweet about things, Facebook. What I have in here, and again, I'll let you do this if you value your education. I don't want to take up your valuable time, my valuable time, actually. But this one thing was interesting as I was just sort of Googling this, and this next little link is sort of the top tweets of this past Super Bowl with the Broncos, and the Patriots. No, the Colts. Hell, I don't remember. But what's so funny is that you look at these tweets. A lot of them are not about the game at all. It's about those commercials and about the puppy monkey baby, puppy monkey baby. So that's interesting. And then another thing that I have here is the next link is from some place called Fan Page List, and it just sort of indicates some of the athletes in the world who have the most followers on Facebook and Twitter, and most of them are not Americans. I mean, we are very, very ethnocentric about things. We think, you know, football is everything. It is, but it's soccer. And so that's really, really interesting to look at. That's it. Fade to black. That's sort of cool looking. Take care. Have a good night.